Well, we are here with Jason and Tim, but we have a guest here that I think Jason set this all up for a reason, because last time, if everybody remembers, we had two Baptists and a Presbyterian. Jason, our resident Presbyterian. This time, Jason invited the guest, and what do you know? It's a Presbyterian.
Oh my goodness, how did that happen? Oh man.
So this is good. This is good. And this is going to be kind of the topic of what we're talking about in this video. Is we're going to be talking about Presbyterians, and we're obviously not going to get into all of the history and the details of Presbyterianism, but we are going to get a little bit of an overview, as well as talk about some of the specifics going on with a decision that was made in a Presbyterian denomination, the PCA. And we'll talk about that and define that. So our guest tonight is a Presbyterian pastor, Pastor Joel Smit. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is great to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Tim and Jason. Long time listener, first time caller here to the Frisch Perspective. So thankful for your work and the videos that y'all do.
Thank you so much. That is great to hear. And Pastor, I'm putting up your biography because you sent it to me. And if people want to read through that, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I did notice that you actually served for a time as a pastor of families and outreach. It says from 2008 to 2015. And that was at Midway Presbyterian in Powder Springs, Georgia. And then you graduated from Simpson University in 2002, or that was actually before what I just talked about. And that was in biblical studies from Simpson. And then you attended Greenville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, receiving a Master of Divinity degree in 2008. And so you have been at, and it does say here, Smyrna Presbyterian Church as the senior pastor since 2015, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Smyrna is just on the outskirts of greater Atlanta, so it's kind of part of the greater Atlanta sprawl. And we are just 4 miles away from the new Braves ballpark. So go Braves. I've seen your Fighting Owl Phil's there shirt, Tim, so I had to.
Yes, I was ready. I was prepared. And I have to say, out of all the things on here, that was definitely the thing that I struggled with the most. That was the most controversial thing I read in this whole bio, was "Go Braves" at the end. So I have to confess, I decided there's something I really need to show you guys on the subject of baseball before we talk about Presbyterianism.
I love it.
So let me just show you this video here. Have you guys seen this? This is a Phillies fan at a Braves game. Can you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
So he has a ball that one of the players threw to him. And then the next clip here is he actually goes over and hands the ball to a Braves fan.
Oh, man, that's great.
Man.
And yeah, I just wanted to first of all show that to just show how great Phillies fans are.
They found the one.
They found the one. Absolutely.
But also, to show, hey, that's kind of a great tie-in with what we're doing tonight. It's people that, you could say are on different teams, Baptist, Presbyterian, but really we're all part of something bigger. We're part of the Church of Christ, and
absolutely,
we do want to learn from each other. We do want to be edified and grow as we speak the truth and love to each other. And so that's why I'm so excited for us to have this conversation, because this is a chance for a lot of people to learn. I know I will learn some things talking about, your specific denomination and what you guys are dealing with, the things that you are traversing through as a denomination and as Presbyterians. Let's start though with the subject of what it means to be Presbyterian. And, we don't have to get too detailed, but I definitely want to make sure that anybody out there listening who just knows that Presbyterian is some sort of a name that some Christians have, what does that mean?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll kind of start with the actual name of Presbyterianism. So we get our name from the Greek word presbyter, which means elder in the Greek. And so essentially what we're saying by our name is talking about our polity, that we are an elder governed church. And so that kind of talks to how we have structured ourselves as a whole. So with that, that means that our form of government is not top down. It's not Anglican or like a bishopric, like you'd think in the Anglican or Episcopal or either the Catholic Church. Obviously, the prime example would be the Catholic Church, where you got the Pope on the top, and then you have archbishops and then other bishops and things of that nature, and everything kind of trickles its way down. So we're not a top-down approach denomination, but on the flip side, we're also not a bottom-up church either, which means we're not congregational in the sense that the congregation makes the decisions or votes on things. So how we are structured is that the congregation chooses its leaders, obviously as they are laid out in Scripture in 1 Timothy 3 and Titus chapter 1, with both elders and deacons. And we have those that represent those qualifications that Paul lists there in those passages to be those that would be put forward by the congregation and then voted on by the congregation as a whole, and then those individuals serve. So in the PCA, we are only allow males as officers of the church. So we have a more of a complementarian view of men and women versus an egalitarian view, and so it is only open to men, as we would see 1 Timothy 2 and 1 Timothy 3 talking about, and having that be limited to just men and deacon and elder roles. But then those men represent the church and make the decisions. And so those decisions happen on basically three different levels, three different courts. So we have the session, which is made up of the local church. So the session of elders would make decisions for that local body, that local church. But then those churches are made up of a regional body, which is a presbytery. So we are a part of a bigger office or a bigger court that would determine things on a regional level. And then we have a national level, which would be the General Assembly, which would determine things on a denominational level. And so there's three different levels of courts. Again, those aren't even necessarily top down. Each of those we would see as working in conjunction with one another. One is not more powerful than the other, but they are there for kind of checks and balances to review the work of the other one. So the presbytery would kind of check the work and see that the churches are in compliance with our constitutional standards. So our Constitution is made up of the Westminster Confession of Faith, along with the catechisms, the larger and shorter catechism of the Westminster, and then our Book of Church Order. So those are kind of our constitutional documents that make up how we are run, what our theology is, and how things are to be governed and structured. And so each one of those would make sure that the churches are and the presbyteries are staying in alignment with the common ground that we've all agreed upon. So we are very much a confessional church, which means that the confessions, the Westminster Confession of Faith, is a representational of what we believe that the scriptures teach. So it's not as high or authoritative as the scriptures by any means, but it is a good summary of what we believe the scriptures to teach. And so every officer in the Presbyterian Church has to subscribe to the Westminster Confession of Faith. And if there's anything that they differ with, they have to allow that to be known to their presbytery before they enter in to the office or before they have ordination. That's so we are all on the same page. We're kind of playing by all the same playbooks, and we're adhering to all the same standards. So that's kind of Presbyterian polity and theology in a nutshell. So the PCA, if I can just kind of go into that, PCA was Presbyterian Church in America, was formed in 1973 out of the larger Presbyterian mainline denomination. At that time, it was the PCUS. Now it's become the PCUSA. And essentially, it was conservatives that left in the 70s to form this new denomination. And they wanted it to be founded basically on three major principles. They wanted to be faithful to the scriptures, true to the Reformed faith as it's defined in the Westminster Confession of Faith, and then obedient to the Great Commission. So those were kind of the three tenets that the PCA wanted to be known by. And I would say still after almost 50 years, that's still a pretty good definition of what we want to be known by and known for. So we have about 2,000 churches nationwide in all 50 states. The majority are probably in the Southeast. That's part of our history of where we began and were formed. But with those 2,000 churches, there's about 400,000 members. So we're still, in some degrees, a smallish denomination in comparison to some other denominations in the United States. But we would probably be the largest conservative, Reformed, and Presbyterian denomination for sure.
Okay.
Excellent.
So thank you for explaining all that. I did notice, though, Jason, that your video cut out for a little bit there. And
I went and grabbed, I ran over here to grab my Book of Church Order in Westminster.
I was just going to say your color was off since you came back on, but it just went back. You must have held something up that set the white balance back.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I was grabbing it because I was actually going, and Joel actually addressed it. I was just going to say, hey, because he mentioned the Book of Church Order in Westminster, and I could hear it already in the comment section. What about the Bible? But Joel had kind of addressed it while I was grabbing those. So I was trying to get some object lessons over here, and
you're trying to preempt any questions from Baptists that are going to come at you. I know it, right?
I already know they're down in the comment section, man.
Yeah.
They're already down there.
It is a good question. The reason why we don't have, quote unquote, the Bible as part of our Constitution is because we want our Constitution to be amended, and the Bible cannot be amended. It is infallible. It is perfect. It needs no amendments from us. And so everything is obviously subservient to the scriptures as a whole. So we want to adhere and be faithful to the scriptures. But the Westminster and the Book of Church Order can be amended, and that's a part of what we actually did, not with the Westminster, but with the Book of Church Order in our General Assembly this year, which I think we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah, we are going to talk about that because it's specifically related to LGBT issues. So we're gonna definitely talk about that. But I definitely want to just make sure that we're clear on some of the things that you spelled out there. So it sounds like you have these groups of men, as you talked about, that are elders, and you have that in the local assembly, local congregation. You have that on a kind of a mid-tier level, and then you have the national. Was it the national? Is that the way you put it?
General Assembly is what it's
General
called.
Assembly. Okay, and what was the mid-tier called?
Presbyteries.
The presbyteries. Okay,
yeah.
So you, and then the local is
just the session. Yeah, I know.
Session. Okay. Yeah.
It has its own language.
Yeah. And they're called courts, you said too. You did.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I like that term. Sounds very official.
Love it.
We love everything official, and
that's right.
Rules and order. Let everything be done in decent and in order is one of our favorite scripture verses for sure.
Yeah. I can tell, just Presbyterians, and I, like I said, there's a lot that we can learn from each other and be edified. I do actually appreciate the thoughtfulness and the planning that I think goes into a lot of what you do. And I just think that is a piece that, other churches can learn from, because there is a tendency in some circles to de-emphasize the idea of planning and thinking through things. And so I think structure can be a really good thing. I noticed, though, that you were kind of emphasizing there not being top down, that even like that General Assembly is not ruling over all of the other presbytery groups. So what do you mean by that? I'd like to know if on the local level, it sounds like these pastors or elders are approved or in some way chosen by the church, the local church. And does that also happen somehow on those higher tiers?
Well, no, because those that are chosen on the local level have the ability to be a part of the other courts. So they are part of those other levels as a result of being elected by their local congregation. So myself as a teaching elder is a part of the presbytery as well as the General Assembly. And then we have what are called ruling elders, which are those that are usually not vocationally pastors, but we would still consider them elders on the same level as myself and the other pastor that we have at our church. But their function more as to help rule, to help shepherd. But there is not even a kind of a, the teaching elders isn't a higher status than the ruling elders. So the ruling elders and teaching elders both have a place at the presbytery as well as at the General Assembly. So they represent their church and obviously Christ on all of those levels, all of those different areas.
Okay, so the level that is local church would be chosen by the local congregation, local assembly, and then you said, is it the leaders of that church that then choose for the presbytery?
No, so all of the elders at the local level would automatically have a place at the next level, which would be the presbytery, and then the higher level, which would be the General Assembly.
I see.
So
they're all included in that.
They are all included in that, correct? Yeah.
I see.
And so yeah, they have opportunities to go both to presbytery and to General Assembly. So that is not even limited in a sense to who is elected or chosen to go, but the churches get to send who they want to those different levels.
Okay. So the churches actually decide on certain leaders then to go to those other levels? Is that
right? Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Elders as themselves would determine who's going to go, and usually, at least in our church, it's, hey, who's available to go on this day, and then with General Assembly, it's a whole week. So that's definitely a long commitment. But this year we had 2 of our ruling elders that went, and it was great to have them, and it's really helpful to have their perspective on that national level.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Jason, go ahead.
I was just going to give like just a visual. So at our church, we have basically nominations. So the congregation will nominate men to be deacons or elders. Since we're focusing on elders, we'll talk about elders during that nomination process. So basically the congregation says, hey, somebody in the congregation says, man, Tim, he has a great heart. He really loves God. He's great at teaching. He knows God's word. We really want him to represent us as an elder at our church. So Tim goes through the nomination process, and fast forward, Tim becomes an elder. Tim is automatically a member of the session at our church. Tim can also go to the presbytery when we have our regional presbytery meetings. And once a year, Tim is also invited to go, and I don't like using the word invited, but is able to go to the General Assembly as an elder from our church. So it's not necessarily like they have to do a nomination or they have to choose somebody. Once you become an elder, and once you become an elder, you're on the session, you can be a part of the presbytery, you can be a part of the General Assembly, and even in that, you can join various committees and such in the General Assembly if you want to be a part of, how to do the wording in the Book of Church Order, or how to select who selects the coffee. That kind of stuff is important in Presbyterians. So, who selects the coffee?
We're very serious about our coffee.
Okay, so is there actual an approved list of coffee brands in the Book of Church Order?
No, but
actually, the deacons are over that. I will make
that. That might take up like 5 hours of our next General Assembly if that's proposed.
That could be a very heated discussion on coffee. No pun intended.
No, actually, if there's any consolation, that will go through the diaconate. So the deacons actually are responsible for the coffee. So
Jason is one of our fine deacon representatives at Smyrna Presbyterian Church. So we are glad to have
Jason is one of the coffee the people that help to make decisions about coffee. I see.
Yeah.
Well, there is in chapter 43, it is about complaints. So I'm sure many of our members have found that chapter as relates to when the coffee craft runs out a little bit faster than they expected. So they know about how to file a complaint.
All right. Well, I tell you, this is a conversation that is fascinating, and there's so much we could learn. I do want to ask one more thing about structure, and then I want to clarify more about your denomination. So as far as the presbytery level goes, that middle tier, how wide of a region or how big are those? I'm kind of not sure, because you have one on the national, then I understand the local church level. So how big is the presbytery?
Right. So we have 88 presbyteries that are subdivided in various ways, and it usually goes with a certain number. Some can be a little bit smaller, some can be quite big depending on their geographical area. Some can have a very big geographical area because we don't have a lot of churches out there. But essentially, the presbytery, one of their main functions is that they accept pastors both as candidates to be ordained, as well as those that are coming from different parts of the region into that area. And so it's the presbytery's responsibility to review these pastors and to examine them theologically. And so they're kind of the safeguard for the local churches. And obviously you can't be doing that on a national level. So this helps us to kind of have that mid-level to do some of the work of the church in a more regional area, as well as a little bit more limited time and space area as well to do some of those things.
All right. Well, that's great. I mean, I'm definitely learning a lot. Jason just wrote to me in the chat that he's getting us used to the language here. He's getting, you guys are getting me used to the language, so he can nominate me. But I don't know. I think we have some other doctrinal things we need to cover too, Jason, before we got there.
Come on.
No, this is good.
I don't know if you know, Joel. I don't know if you know, but Tim has 6 kids.
Is that right?
Yeah, so he actually has you beat.
He does. We have 4, so I don't think we're going to make it to 6. So you win, my friend.
You win it.
Yes, I win. Well, I don't know if I put it that way, but yes, yes.
Yeah, and I would also just, Tim, one of the things I think is helpful. Sometimes, denominations can get a bad rap, but one of the things that I think is helpful in our structure is that it does provide some safety and protection for members on the local level. So let's say a pastor starts teaching heresy. If you're in a non-denominational church, what recourse do you have to try to bring that church and specifically that pastor into alignment? You really don't, because he has no oversight over him. And so one of the things that I think is helpful is that members have the ability to appeal to the higher level to intervene if needed and necessary. In other words, they don't have to just leave their church if something bad or something goes awry. There is that level of safety and that level of protection for them, because we have these different levels of the church, which does help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we would all agree that because of our fallenness as humans, we're obviously prone to error, and that's why you even see like what happened in your, your church history that is connected with Presbyterianism. Your denomination was specifically formed because of error, and we're going to talk about soon some things you guys are trying to guard or trying to clarify concerning how we define church and leadership in the church. But as far as the PCA, I just want to be very clear on this, and I think you mentioned a little bit. You are part of the PCA, but there is another denomination that is, I think, what you referred to as a mainline denomination. A lot of times they're referred to that way. That is the PCUSA. And they're very different because you would be, I think you would describe yourself as being very biblical in doctrine, rooted in historic understandings of the Christian faith, whereas the PCUSA is more of a liberal denomination. That would be one way we could probably characterize it, a more theologically liberal leaning denomination. And they have kind of gone in a very different direction. And that's partly why it was started, or that's primarily why it was started to begin with. But there are still these different kinds of Presbyterian churches out there.
That is correct. Yes. That was the main reason why there was the breakaway in the early 70s, and the PCA, Presbyterian Church in America, was formed. It was first named the Continuing Presbyterian Church, which was saying, hey, we're not the ones that left. You all were the ones that left the moorings, the theological and scriptural foundations. And so their first name was the Continuing Presbyterian Church, but then it later had a name change of the Presbyterian Church in America. And I mean, I don't want to be disparaging of the PCUSA as a whole. There are some faithful brothers and faithful Christians in that, but I would say as a whole, they have gone adrift theologically and scripturally from the standards that we would see as would be biblical and what would be needed to be held to as a church.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to just say this as a non-Presbyterian. I do honestly wish there was a way we could have names that are not as confusing to outsiders. That's just too close. And it must frustrate you all the time having to explain to people the difference between those two denominations because they are so close in their names. But what can you do?
What can you do? I know it. We don't help people at all.
If you're going to become a Presbyterian, you have to do the work of understanding these things, right?